My name's Godfrey. I'm the head teacher of PE at Belmont High School. I've been teaching the HSC course in PDHPE since 1997, and I've also been marking the senior course for a number of years, and I really find that a fantastic experience as a teacher because it's great professional learning for me to see the quality of the work that students can produce down on paper, and then I can take that back to my students as well. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the exam structure and some technique things that you could use to improve your marks in the HSC. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some important study tips that you might find useful when you are completing your lead up to your HSC as well. So the first thing I want to go over today is talking about the structure of the HSC exam itself. And for PDHPE, we have a 3-hour examination. And it's broken up into several different sections. So the first section there contains part 1 and part 2. It's worth 60 marks in total, and it's broken down into multiple choice section of 20 multiple choice questions, and also a short answer section worth 40 marks. Now for the multiple choice questions, the first 10 of those questions are from Core 1, and the second 10 multiple choice questions are from Core 2. So they're worth 20 marks in total. For Part B, the short answers, 20 marks come from the Core 1 part of the course and 20 marks come from Core 2 part of the course. So it's fairly evenly balanced in terms of the breakdown of marks for those areas. The second section of the paper is called the options questions, and that's worth 40 marks. Now in your time of Year 12 study, you would have studied 2 options, and each of those is broken down into 20 marks each. So you need to answer 2 of those options questions in the exam. And it's very important, and this is one important tip that I could pass on to you, is to make sure you only answer the options that you have studied. Many kids decide, because they see some words in the question that they think might give them a key to answering the question, they think, I'll have a go at doing that one. But really the best way to do it is to answer the options questions that you have studied, because deep down you will probably know something a little bit more than what you would do if you were just answering any random question from the 5 that are on offer for you. The HSC PDHPE exam is 3 hours long. It also includes 5 minutes worth of reading time. And one very important thing is to use that reading time effectively. When you first come into the exam, you'll be asked to sit down, leave your pen on the table, and when it's time to start, you can open the paper and start reading through it. It's really important that you gauge in your head some of the questions that you need to answer and some of the important points that you're going to put down on paper. So you need right from the beginning to have a good plan of action of what you're going to do. So utilise that 5 minutes of reading time the best you possibly can. Don't just sit there and do nothing. It's really important to have a plan. Once the exam starts, you have then 3 hours to complete the paper. A suggested time that some people use, and I find it quite useful with my students, is to break it down into sections. So for Part A, the multiple choice, you look at approximately 40 minutes to answer those 20 questions. That gives you approximately 2 minutes per question. For Part B, you can look to answer those short answer questions of Part B in approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes. That should give you sufficient time to answer. And usually in the HSC exam, there's between 6 and 8 of the short answer questions. So if you break that down, that will give you sufficient enough time to answer those questions for that Part B section. That then comes to the options part of the paper, the 2 that you've studied in class. And once again, you should look to complete that section in approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes. Once again, there's usually between 2 to 3 questions of each option, and usually worth between 8 and 12 marks. So you're going to have some extended responses there, not super long answers, but certainly 1 to 2 pages worth of writing in that time that you need to get down on paper the best you can. The next thing I'd like to talk about is how to answer a multiple choice question. Multiple choice is worth 20 marks in your paper, so it's a considerable amount of marks. It's really important that you follow a process in order to try and achieve the best result that you possibly can. So I suggest to my students that you take a few opportunities to read through the question. The first time when you do that, make sure that you read the question very carefully, making sure that you determine what the question is actually asking. So after you've done that the first time, the second time you would go through and try and eliminate one of the answers that is most incorrect. Usually out of the 4 answers that are available on the paper, there will be one of the answers that is totally incorrect. You can eliminate that answer right from the start. So what I suggest to my students is to put a line through that particular answer. Once you have then eliminated one, that leaves you 3 choices. So you can then have a better chance of trying to work out what is the most correct answer. I have for you here an example of a past HSC multiple choice question. Which psychological performance strategy are athletes using if they are able to perceive themselves winning an event before the event has taken place? Right from the beginning, you can determine that one of the answers is totally incorrect. You would do that by focusing on the key words of the question. For this question, the key words are psychological, strategies, winning, and before. Now these are key points, and in particular the word before. We know from the answers, looking at the answers on the screen, we have A, meditation. Meditation is a form of relaxation technique and is not a psychological strategy. You would therefore eliminate the word meditation right from the beginning. That then leaves you with 3 particular answers. The next one is goal setting. Goal setting is a long-term process that people would sit down and plan out small chunks of achievable tasks or goals that they could work towards over a long period of time. So is it correct? It's up in the air at the moment. The next word is visualization. Visualization is breaking things down into a small chunk or part, and when you are visualizing, it is the fact that you are looking at the actual performance itself. So looking at the options of these answers, that is fairly close to what you would perceive as the correct answer. The last one here is called mental rehearsal. Now mental rehearsal is a number of small chunks put together. So in my mind, I'm looking at the word visualization as the most correct answer here. You have eliminated goal setting because it's going over a long period of time and it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is winning an event. And mental rehearsal is small pieces of or small chunks put together, and once again it's more about a performance rather than a long-term event or a winning event. So the correct answer would be C, visualization. The next thing I'd like to talk about is how to answer a short answer or an extended response question. Now there is a real technique in answering these questions, and it is a useful way that you can maximise the marks in the HSC examination. So the first thing that I suggest to my students is to read the question very carefully. Once you have read the question very carefully, there's a number of key things that you need to look at that will determine how much you have to write and what the value is of each particular question. The 2 things that would lead you to this are the mark value of the question, which is located on the right-hand side of the page, and also the amount of lines or space that is left on the page for you to write your answer down. If there's only 4 or 5 lines, then you know it's going to be a short response and it will usually be worth 3 to 4 marks. If there's a whole page of writing, you will generally know that's going to be worth 8 or 10 or 12 marks. So that's a real key for a student, is how much you need to write, and you should be filling up all the space that is left on the paper. The next thing that you would do is underline or highlight the key words within the question. Usually there is a verb at the start of the question. That is the first thing that you would highlight or underline, because that will determine to you what you actually need to do. Are you describing? Are you analysing? That first word is the real pointer for you to answer the question. Once you have underlined the key words, you then need to come up with a bit of a plan. What I suggest to my students is to write some dot points down the side of the page. Now you have to remember, in the HSC, when it is marked, everything is positively marked. That means anything that is on the paper will be considered as value to your score. You don't get marked down for not having things written down on the page. You will only be marked up. So it's important having a plan, using dot points or writing a few ideas down, that this will then not only guide you, but it can also be used to improve your marks on that particular question. Once you have made your plan, you can then start writing. And one of the ways that I tell my students to answer the question is to state your idea, to explain your idea, and to provide relevant examples. When people are marking the HSC, one of the things that we are told to look at is what sort of examples has the person provided. And that's very important, that you use relevant examples to answer the particular question.